Hey there. Thank you for tapping over to this episode of Coast to Coast. Art, and in particular music, has a special place in my consciousness, and one I don't think that I'm all unique with. All of us get moved by some work of art that's specific to our interests. Maybe we like a different medium, like sculpture or collage. Though if we have a pulse, something will be moving us if we allow it. The only real difference to me in art is the separation that many of us have between the creative act and the art we're enjoying. While we're expressive beings, far too little of us practice a craft to express ourselves. If it's athletics, painting, music, dance, hell, even building a sandcastle, all of that is art. And all of that is expressing ourselves through time, which is all that art is. If the time is moving a brush, strumming a guitar, or taking a jump shot, some people have categorized Homo sapiens as the creative ape. We seem to take absolutely for granted that birds sing, but they don't do it to express themselves. They do it to mark a territory or find a mate. Other animals dance, but only as a means to an end. Homo sapiens will create for creation's sake, something more of us should take upon ourselves to do. And if we do, I think we'll be better individually and collectively. Some of us, though, get moved into art as a calling and can end up going from attending a music festival to playing it. That actually is the journey for this episode's guest. And one that, rather unintentionally, has a lot we can learn from and pour into our own pursuits. Because something odd but true is whether we're starting a business out on our own or just learning a new hobby, that's all going to require creative expression. And to learn more about creativity, the beauty is in doing so, we can draw that out from so many other sources and bring it into our lives. How cultivating a habit of doing that and putting time into it will become the source of our inspiration to continue whatever our endeavor is. Expressing yourself is also the best way to get out of yourself and for a moment transcend into a flow that can power you through the next stream of meticulous but necessary tasks. When you find yourself in a flow of that creativity, it can be easier to see that the act of creation and the practice of meditation are closely linked. And the more you build up that creativity and that creation, the more you hammer away at it, the higher states you can reach, the better places you'll find yourself. Now, I'm not talking about some YouTube televangelist higher state here. I'm talking about when you find that you're doing something you enjoy, and for a moment you stop to realize that the world coming out of your eyes looks a little different, looks a little crisper. That's what I'm describing. A tip to get to that place that's actually coming from software development also applies to the impressionist painters and my guest today, is that when you're working on something, the aim is to take it out of the lab the second that it's ready. Or at the very least, push yourself to have milestones to put it out into the world in some capacity. Just ship the thing. The more you get used to building and shipping it out, the better you'll get. And you'll be able to relish in the accomplishment of completing it. Something that will also fuel you into your next endeavor, and you might feel for a minute that higher state I'm talking about. The world has changed, and with this highly connected environment we're now in, it's easy to distract ourselves, but also never easier to build our own way. Gone are the days where geography dictates career. But on the flip side, we have so much to choose from. How do we find what's really out there and get through the masses that are just deluging us every day? To me, I think it's in the effort. It's in the effort of creating something, taking the time, habit, and cultivating that day in and day out. This episode is going to shine some light on a super talented musician who I believe is doing just what I'm describing. You know, something I think about in our current culture that we take all too passively is the effect the content we take in has on us. Whether it's the art on our walls or the music in our ears, all of that will find its way into us and alter us. On the surface, that's easy to see. We have our power beats that we play when we're working out. But day in and day out, that can take a toll on us that we don't see. That's why personally, I make an effort to be deliberate on what I take in, to make sure that it's going to keep me in the right frame. Which, when I find a musician who has an amazing message and amazing music, I tend to get very excited. My guest today fits that bill. In this interview, he talks about his creative process, finding inspiration, how he's put it all together on his records, his equipment setup, being based in Pittsburgh, and much, much more in between. His name is John O'Halloran, and he goes by the name Chalk Dinosaur, where he has the unique position to be touring and producing not only just as a solo act, but also a duo with his brother, as well as going on stage with a full band, the spectrum of which we dive into as well. His music is a wide range, which I personally really appreciate. He has produced albums everything from surf rock to ambient, all the way through dance and jam band. I've become personally a big fan of his by way of my wife, who I have to thank her for sharing his music to me, which led me to reach out to him and, well, resulted in what you're about to hear, which was an absolutely delightful interview. I put in the show description a link to a Spotify playlist I made with some of my favorite Chalk Dinosaur songs. I encourage you to check out. I promise you, you won't be disappointed. With that, I hope wherever you are on our beautiful big blue planet that you're doing well and you're in the process of building a thriving life. Thanks for listening. Enjoy. Hey, real quick while I have you here. If you like what you're listening to, please tap that follow or subscribe, as well as sign up for notifications so you'll know when our next season or episode drops. Also, if you're curious to look at our catalog of all that we have to offer and some exciting things we have to come, please visit us at bandwidth.productions. Cool. Well, thank you again for joining. Would you mind just giving us a quick introduction, and then I'm going to kick us off?
Sure. My name's John O'Halloran, and composer and producer, and I release music under the name Chalk Dinosaur. Sometimes just me, and sometimes with three collaborators: my brother John Henderson, Michael Berger. We do albums together as a band as well, but it's all Chalk Dinosaur.
Cool. I want to get into a lot, like how I want to kind of structure everything is understanding essentially your artistic process and inspiration and how you really produce and where you all come from, especially with given how varied your catalog is. But I ask a variation of this question every time someone's on first, so I have a new version of it for you. Typically, I asked, "What do you like to do that makes you happy?" But instead, I want to ask you, "Where are you when you're most happy? Kind of, what's your happy place?"
Um, Probably. I mean, there's a few happy places. One's definitely working on a recording, writing a song with no other, like working on that one task and really zeroing in on that, and not I'm not good at multitasking, so just getting to really immerse myself in songwriting and recording. That's definitely one of my major happy places. And then, just hanging out with my fiance, that's another happy place. And then um being at the beach with my family is that's another happy place.
Yeah, I like that. That's it's very wholesome. I could dig it. Uh so all right, so I want to start very broad and reduce the aperture down a little bit more. How do you conjure inspiration? So kind of like the Greeks used to call it muses, where do ideas come from, that kind of thing. Like when you have, especially given like I want to like set up for anyone who's listening who may not have heard your music, your catalog is so varied. I mean, there's like the songs of the Eastern, wind through, fire at the beach through like, sunset. Like it goes from very dancey, modular synth sounds to full bands to more ambient things. So especially given that, like, how do you get inspiration? And then I kind of want to go a little bit deeper from there.
I think pretty much anything that I hear that I like, which obviously, if you listen to the catalog, you could tell I like a lot of dance music, but I also love jam music, and I also love just like songwriting as well. Um, so just all of the things I've ever heard that I really connected with, or I think that all just gets mixed up and it comes out kind of in everything together. And I think kind of just whatever is interesting to me at the time that I'm like sitting down to try to write something is I'll just go with that. And that's been very freeing, not confining the music to a certain genre or something.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that being very liberating, not giving yourself too many constraints or limiting yourself. Um, where does the idea for a track come from, though? So do you sit down and say, I'm going to sit down every day at 7 a.m. or whatever time it is, and that you're just going to force yourself, or are you out and about and all of a sudden out of nowhere this idea comes, and how do you pull it out of the universe?
I think the most of the time it's I go to the place where I make music in the studio where I have all my instruments and stuff and just start playing one of them or start putting sounds together on the computer. Kind of just like putting myself in the place where I have all the tools and kind of just playing playing around until something comes out that seems that like exciting or like it has potential for something else. But yeah, I think a big part of it is just I don't know. It's not necessarily a daily scheduled thing, but I spend a lot of time down here, and anytime I have free that I can just have start with a blank idea or blank project. Um, I mean, a lot of times just having an instrument in my hands will generate some kind of thing that could, some kind of nugget that could turn into a song.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm always very curious about how creative, individuals are able to get their inspiration and where they get it from. Like, yeah, it took me years, but I figured out kind of a rhythm for myself as far as where it goes, and it's always fascinating how much it varies by the person. Like, some people staring at a blank page is the scariest thing ever, and they have to have something walking into it, versus just kind of allowing it to come as you're building it. Um, so like, for example, let's just like the Golden Hour, or that album. Did you have that kind of idea that all of the songs are gonna be more dancey, or any of your albums, because they all seem to have a pretty strong theme through it. So did it kind of go through that process of poking around and seeing what kind of came to you, and then build off of that as you're going through it, knowing that this chunk of months you're gonna be working on an album, or um,
That one just came together. That was like a accumulation of songs that were all like electronic and dancey. I had like accumulated, a lot of times I name my projects just by date. So, I might have like 20 ideas in a month, and over, the course of the year, or I don't know how long some of those ideas have been sitting around, but a lot of them are unfinished and they're just ideas. Um, and so that album was, I had, a handful of them, however many were on the album that I liked. And I wanted to finish. Um, so I kind of went through each one of them and just linearly kind of just, all right, I'm going to work on this one till it's either done or I decide to throw it away. And then yeah, then I pulled a couple older ideas from that had been done, but just didn't have like a fitting home, I guess. So this album kind of just brought together all of these like accumulated dancey electronic productions. Flow State was kind of the same way too. Um, had just found myself with a pool of ideas that like fit together and then put those together on the album, but definitely didn't like sit down to like write an album like that. It was just, there was other songs I had been writing, and like these ones didn't fit on that album, so they just kind of piled up with until there's enough of them that were like uh, like each other to put them together.
Yeah, kind of like building a constellation as opposed to walking in with a plan.
Yeah, it's kind of it was a compilation kind of. But there are other albums like Crystal Coast or Fire on the Beach that were a very condensed period of time where I'm like, I want to write a beachy, like relaxing, mellow. I had a very specific idea that I wanted to do, and then just spent a couple months just doing that.
Yeah, can we hang on Fire on the Beach for a second? Just side note, I really love that
Yeah,
album. I used to live in San
thanks.
Diego with my wife, and it
Oh,
reminds me so
nice.
much of just going to the beach in SoCal. And then I
That's
sent it to a
what's
buddy of
inspired
mine,
me.
and he goes, "Oh, I've heard of this before. Also, this is a bunch of areas around Long Beach." And I started just Google mapping all of the titles, like the laundromat that's over
Oh,
there that you named
yeah,
it. And I was doing
yeah,
this with my wife, and we're like, "Oh my god, like this is the pier. It's all this little, radius. It's all the names are from this area." So
yeah.
how did you do that one? What was your process through that? And kind of adding another build to this. Did you do that one alone, or did you do that one with others?
That one was alone, except for the second track, "Don't You Give Me No," which was um, one of my musician friends in Pittsburgh sent me like a voice memo on his phone of like the vocals that are on there, just like this really goofy voice memo. He's like, I have an idea for a song, and then he sent me that, and then I put like the music and like arranged the vocals in there.
That's awesome.
But
Very postal service.
thanks, yeah, it's a really bizarre song that is really cool because like I never would have made anything like that if he didn't send me this really bizarre voice memo to work with. But yeah, I was living in Long Beach for a couple months because my fiance was doing a travel nursing contract in Long Beach. So we moved there in the fall of 2021 or 2020. And that's like a place where we kind of really like solidified our relationship, driving across country and spending all that time. That's the first time we had lived together actually. So it was a very special time. And whenever we moved back to Pittsburgh and we moved into the place where I'm at now, um, that was like the first thing that I recorded, like the first album. And so that was, yeah, I really love the beachy surf type of coastal vibes and sounds. And, it had been a few years since I'd made anything like that. So I definitely wanted to just like dive into that world and just focus on that, which is really nice because a lot of times I don't really have a plan or a distinct set of criteria for something, and that sometimes that open-endedness can be really difficult to make decisions about and have any kind of direction. So this one I had a very clear direction, just surf, beach, vintage, like happy. Um, and I was also borrowing some gear. Some of my friends lent me some gear. So I had a Stratocaster that was lent to me, which is like a lot of the guitar work on that album is with the Stratocaster, which I don't normally have. So that definitely influenced a lot of the playing on that album. And then uh, Alyssa, my fiance, she had gotten me a couple instruments. She got me a ukulele and a steel drum. So I wanted to like make something with those. And that's, I mean, Fire on the Beach was from that. I was like, I'm going to try to make a song with the ukulele that she got me. And then turn into that song.
Yeah, it's my favorite. The title track is my favorite off of that. I probably your
Thanks.
most listened to the past 2 months. I have that been having that. I've been blasting people with it too. It's so happy.
Thank you.
Uh, I
Thank you. That's one of my proudest, I think, songs and recordings.
Oh well, I'm happy to hear that. I can see that, especially with like the time period of your life that kind of solidifies with it, and the shacking it up in November makes a lot more sense too. Now that you've told me the background to it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, that was the Huntington Beach was where there was the fire on the beach. That was like an event that happened. Like we had a fire on the beach, which like I love having fires and I love the beach. And I had no idea that there was a place where they just have, you know, like dozens of public fire
yeah,
pits that you can just use.
yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah, no, that part of, especially from being in the Midwest, where I'm from, and grew up, being able to have a fire on the beach that's not like horribly illegal, is was like perplexing to me. Also very fun, especially
Yeah.
when the moon's out there and all that. Um, so what was your process for that then? Did you say I have this concept? Now, how did you go from concept to execution?
I think I just kind of chose the tones that I was
Hmm.
going to work with, like ukulele, a Stratocaster, like surfy guitar, um, this steel drum. So kind of I was just like playing around with those instruments, and you know, once I had like some chords, like a chord loop from the ukulele, like then that kind of just sprouts a whole bunch of they kind of the song kind of then like directs you at that point
Hmm.
to some degree, and um, you know, things just start to happen.
When did you know that you were done with the album? So you had that song that was built up, and then how did you go to build up more songs, and at what point did you know you were done? Because I mean, I think any creative, the things that they struggle the most with, at least especially speaking for myself, it's like writer's block, being able to know and get started, and then to know you're done because you're never really done.
I think I wanted to do five songs, um, at the minimum. Just if I could get 5 songs I liked, that would be good. I kind of like a 5 song EP. I've done a couple of those where it's just a couple songs that are of specific style, and I really like that. It's much more approachable project. So I got the 5 songs that I, you know, felt like they were solid, and then I happen to have 2 other songs that fit the theme
Hmm.
that were just unreleased, just collecting dust. That was probably the last 2 songs in the album, which is weird because Spotify for some reason randomly like loves Ballast Point, that song, which is it was like an afterthought. I put it on the album because it was done. It was you know, I like it, but it wasn't something I put a lot of thought into. I added the extra 2 songs also because I wanted it to appear in my discography under albums, because it's like a pet peeve of mine that EPs go under singles,
Yeah, I hate
the
that.
singles category.
It's so frustrating to me.
So I wanted to have it appear with, you know, the album. So 7 tracks is like the criteria. It's either has to be a certain length of time or it has to be 7 tracks. So it's kind of like it's a very afterthought. I like those 2 last ones, but those weren't a part of the recording process. But they, you know, they fit the album. So it seemed like a good place to just let him free. No use in just like not having anybody listen to him, you know?
Yeah, certainly. How how have you gotten over the course of your career to be able to know to constrain yourself or to set goals like this? Because that's definitely something that I would imagine it would take effort to get there. But did it? Did you kind of fall into it already, being very methodical, or was that something that took time to kind of chisel away at the marble?
To constrain myself, like
Like walking into
with
that
these.
album saying, I know I want to make 5 tracks and I want to have it to be this theme, and I know that if I start with these tones it'll make it easier.
Yeah. Well, I think or pretty early on, I started to like doing the shorter album EP format. Um, I think the first one I did was Kitty Hawk Surf, it was called, and it was just 5 surf rock songs. And I remember releasing that and being just like happy with the way that felt, and the process of putting that together was I got like the same fulfillment from releasing a full length. I was able to like focus more on the songs that were in there. There's just less time to get like off track and lost in the discouraged by the process. I don't know. I really feed off completing something and releasing it. So, and it doesn't have to be a huge album. Like if it's, I feel like it's got to be more than a single, but doesn't have to be a full length album. So I found that like even some of my 3-song EPs were things that were really satisfying to me. Um, so I just found that 3 to 8 songs is like a very sweet spot for me in terms of the length of time it takes to make it. So I can have that like hit of, I just finished something and I get to share it. Um, so I just like that. And so anytime I'm like, all right, I want to work, like I'm working on an album, or we're starting to put together music, me and my brother, that will be kind of what we're doing live right now, me and my brother. Um, so I think for that we'll probably have the same thing. Like it doesn't have to be a full length, but we want it to be 5 to 7 songs. That's like very doable, and we won't have to wait like a whole year to finish it, kind of thing. So just less pressure, and the longer stuff sits around, I feel like the more weight it holds, like in my brain, and it starts to like weigh on me that I have these unfinished things. So keeping it a little shorter has been nice. And then just having the theme, like, it was really, I was gifted these instruments, so I wanted to make some music with them. And probably once I got like my teeth into the first song, I'm like, oh, I like this a lot. I want to make more. Then I was like, all right, I want to make like, I probably started a couple more ideas. I probably started most of those ideas like in the span of a week, and then just spent the next couple months like finishing those.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. Uh, how did you get started into music? What was your first kind of foray into it, and then at what moment did you say like this is what I want to do?
Um, my mom got all of us. I have 3 brothers, and she got us all started with classical, like violin or piano, from like 5 years old. So that was when I first started playing music, and I kind of was doing organized school learning, like either band or orchestra stuff, until I was done with high school. But I didn't really get into I guess I started messing around with like computer programs that my brother would had. Um, there's a program called Fruity Loops and another one called Acid, and they were kind of like, it was almost like video games to me, like making a beat on these things. And then in high school, I started messing around with GarageBand. I was really into video at the time, film. Like I wanted to do film and video. But as I was spending all the time on the computer with that stuff, I was like really starting to spend a lot more time messing around with the music programs. And then when I really, really dove in was in freshman year of college. Like the summer before I left for college, I got a recording interface, And then I was able to record, then I was able to record all this. I had everything I needed to make like a complete song. So once I started doing that, it really got a hold of me, and I just got very, very obsessed with that and found a lot of enjoyment out of making like a completed piece of music. Which if you go to johnohalloran.com, you can like hear those first ones, and they're very uh, they're kind of embarrassing, but it's also really interesting to hear. You know, you can hear progression for sure. But yeah, college. That's like first year of college, and then by the time I finished college, I knew that that is what I was gonna try to do, but probably not until junior or senior year did I feel like that was like okay, or that it was for real.
What? Yeah, no. The magic of finally getting an interface and being able to record is really nice. And I did actually check out your website before reaching out to you, and I saw that, and I really like when people still keep their early stuff up because it's really inspiring to see the progression, and you can kind of see where all of that comes from and how it expands. It's really great. What did you go to school for?
It was a film and video studies major. It's kind of more on like the writing side. It's like screenwriting and stuff like that, but like kind of more of like an English major almost. But yeah, really I was just trying to get through it. I don't know, probably like sophomore year I just wanted to get through it to finish it, but I was obsessed completely with writing and recording and trying to, make better recordings and stuff. They didn't have a like a music technology major or anything at the time. But if they did, I definitely would have done that. I would have switched. But that was pretty much the closest I could get. I didn't want to do a music major, like a performance major or something, because I used to date one, and it's so rigorous, and it seems like I my biggest fear is just burning out on it, and because it's kind of the thing that gives me the most joy and fulfillment, and so like burning out on it just was very scary to me. So I didn't want to do that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Taking the joy out of it, especially when it's something so rigorous. Where if you have the discipline on your own to be able to teach yourself it, that's probably one of the better paths. Well, there's many paths, I suppose. Um, that's really great. At what point did you start playing out and playing live and starting to really shit? Was it right after graduation when you shifted into full time? This is what I'm doing, or at least trying to spend all your moments doing it.
Well, I was in a band. I was in a band in high school. A couple just like I don't know. I feel like I would mess around playing with friends, do like battle of the bands and stuff. Played a couple shows, but started playing Chalk Dinosaur shows the spring of my freshman year of college. Um, and was doing that pretty much, as much as we could. It was all local stuff though, and did that till 2010. So for 2 years, and then we stopped playing, and I just focused on producing, getting just producing and writing pretty much for the next 4 years.
That's cool. How did you come up with the name Chalk Dinosaur?
Um, yeah, it was pretty hard to find. It was hard to think of a name that wasn't already taken. And college freshman year, I was definitely feeling a huge wave of nostalgia, maybe for like the first time, because it was a very clear line between, childhood is over and adulthood. So it was very just feeling super nostalgic, and a lot of my early music is kind of about that feeling. But so I think Chalk Dinosaur just was trying to think of childhood imagery type of things that was, you know, not taken, a name that wasn't taken. So it's just that was a combination of words that was not taken,
Yeah.
and felt comfortable with that being the name.
Yeah, I dig it. It's fun. I first heard of you. Well, we saw you in the lineup at summer camp, the last summer camp actually. This last one and
Cool.
also the last one. And then some people when I was hanging out, just kind of chit chatting and making acquaintances like you do at a festival. They had mentioned going to see you, and then I heard people that we missed a set. I honestly, for the life of me, can't remember why. But we missed your set, and then other people were talking about how great it was, and I remember for just hearing the name, thinking like, oh, I kind of dig that. That's fun. It's totally it's
Nice.
totally different.
Cool.
Uh,
So you were at summer camp this year?
I was, yeah, the Dust Bowl,
Sweet.
the giant Dust Bowl that it was summer camp.
Yeah, that was cool. I hadn't been there since I went there in 2014 or 15, just for fun, and then it was cool to get to go back and to get to play this year. At the same time that we were playing, Mo and Humphreys McGee were doing like a joint set, and it was last summer camp ever, and they were like the longtime hosts. So I feel like the hardcore summer camp people weren't gonna miss that one.
Yeah, I wasn't one of them. Honestly, I can't for the life of me because I knew I wasn't. I mean, Mo and Humphreys are good, but I wasn't, especially with that being a big crowd. I wasn't too keen on it. Um, but definitely interesting. That had to be a really cool experience going to summer camp and then 9 years later playing it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely cool. I've gotten to have a couple of those experiences over the past 5 years since we really started since we've continued to kind of chip away with the performing. Got to play some of the events that I used to go to, like Peach Festival and the Workout and Electric Forest. They're all it's very cool because I was not performing, 2011 to 2014, but was going to a lot of festivals and kind of figuring out what I wanted to do. And, a lot of these festivals were very, very influential in kind of creating a spark for like I want to be involved with that, like what they're doing. So it's definitely cool to get to participate in some of those.
Yeah, congrats. That's a really nice milestone.
Thanks. Yeah, it's cool to full circle.
Yes, yeah, seriously. In the crowd to in front of it. How is that? How is it playing? Because I think you have a really unique experience, especially under the same label or the same band title of Chalk Dinosaur. You have played and obviously create and do play out both as a solo act and as a in a band. How does that experience differ from I mean both the creative process but also playing out in front of a crowd? How does it differ when it's just you with your instruments versus you synchronizing with other people?
Yeah, they're both it's whenever I play, yeah, most like right now we're doing either like me and my brother playing like our duo arrangement. That's what we did at summer camp. That's what we've done at a couple other festivals. And then some of the shows are four of us. We're playing like music off Stuck in Between and Spectrum and Sprout. The more like rock stuff. And the duo is nice, duo or solo. It's like plays from the same albums and like repertoire, but that's really nice because it's all very, very controlled and calculated. Like everything is, it's just very, lot less variables and just, yeah, more of a controlled sound and a lot more agile in the way, like logistically, like getting together to write, play, travel. It's all just like way simpler with two people. But what we don't have with the two people is the ability to kind of stretch out a set or improvise to jam. And there's just, there's less creative input coming in. So with the band, it's a more of a much more of like a different product than something like the duo stuff is a lot more closer to like something I would come up with on my own. The band is that stuff is just like a lot of it's just, you know, would never exist if we didn't get together and share our ideas. But, the difficulties with the band is just pretty much all logistically based. Just getting together, aligning schedules. It's just exponentially harder and more expensive to travel with a band, and also just to have the time, like especially as we're getting older now. If we were in college or like right after college, you know we would probably be able to put more time into it together. But everybody's life continues just to get more complex, and time gets more scarce. So that's really the hard part about the band. But I love the feeling of creating a piece of music together with them that is totally just a product of the unit, and it's just something that wouldn't exist or we wouldn't think of individually, which I mean that's the cool part about being in a band, I think.
Yeah. Do you find that the energy shifts for you as you're up there, given the fact that it's like you said, it's more constrained versus being able to have more of a, I guess I want to say chaos, but it's not really chaos. It's more like constrained or flow almost.
I feel like I feel like the way I feel on stage is it's a little bit there's a little more wiggle room for error with the band. If I make a mistake or something in my, one of my instruments, I have some kind of issue, there's three other guys that can carry on and jam or something while I, figure, I don't have to do as much also with like the playing. Like it's kind of nice with the four piece. I can play less and like sit more in the space. Whereas when it's the two piece, I need to be doing stuff a lot more. And if I don't do it, then it's, there's nothing to cover it up or nothing to like pillow or cushion that. Um, yeah, but really the way I feel on stage is pretty much all about how it sounds on stage, which is different every show, it seems like, which is, I really want to figure out a way to get that, solid every show, which seems like, doing some kind of in-ear monitor thing is the ultimate destination. But I mean, that can make me play a lot better and have a much better time if I can hear everybody. If I can't hear everybody or something's off, can't hear myself or something, it's really difficult to you kind of just have to like trust that out front it sounds good, even though it might sound bad where you're standing. That's really the thing that's like throws me off the most with shows. And I find that it's easier to get a good on stage sound with the two piece band. But we've still had shows where it's not been good, even with just the two of us. But that's kind of that's honestly the main factor. And then, because if I can hear everyone and I hear the other guitar player is doing like a really good solo or something, or I hear like the bass player do a sweet fill, or the drummer, anytime anybody like does something really cool, it definitely is exciting.
Yeah, that's got to be giving you a boost. Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like what you're saying right there is kind of a truism for collaboration in general, where if you're doing something by yourself, it's hard to keep going and hard to keep it alive, and it's a lot of effort. Where once you have more people, if you're able to find your role, it's a lot easier to kind of boost each other up, if you will. Um, how, how do crowds play into it? So have you, picked up on some crowds are just different in some places versus others, some festivals versus others, venues, cities? How does that, what is the, I really like this. There's this David Bowie interview from, I think, like 1999. He pretty much predicts the modern internet, which is a whole thing, and it's amazing. But one of the things he says is, he references the rave culture at that time, which, now we would probably just call house music, or, I mean, festivals is very similar to that, and how there's a call and response between the crowd and the artist, and how, the music that the artist is putting on almost wouldn't exist in a vacuum if it wasn't the crowd there as well, dancing with it and vibing with it. So I'm curious how that energy exchange, how that setting and feel can differ by day, night, city, venue, and how does that feel on stage, especially once again, like, I don't want to keep harping on it, but it is curious to have somebody who is both a solo act, a duo act, and a full band. That's usually something that someone's usually in one of those lanes.
Yeah, I feel like I'm only recently and still trying to tune into that more, because for a while I would be so focused on playing what I was going to play good, and not like making any mistakes, and making sure I like remembered. I don't know, I was like kind of a little bit neurotic, and a little like stressed sometimes. So I would be in my own bubble, like doing what I'm doing. And I feel like I've been recently trying to remind myself to, get out of that, and like look around, look at what's going on in the room. Because a lot of times if I do that, I look around and I see somebody having a good time, or they're looking at me, then you look at them, and then they, a lot of times I just end up like smiling from that, and like it lifts my mood. So I'm trying to remember to do that more, and the more experience we have with the music that we're playing, the more comfortable I feel, like the less, hyper focused I am on the songs, like they're starting to become more internalized the more we play them. So I'm able to kind of take in the surroundings a little more. But it definitely, I mean, that aspect is what I love about the jam and festival scene. Like that's what drew me into it. That's what attracted me to it when I first was in that environment, around the fans of these, you know, jam bands and like festival type things. Like the energy is just, um, everybody's having such a good time. Everybody's, for the most part, like really nice, and non-judgmental. And so, I mean, just being involved in that scene, if there's a room full of people, it's usually great. And the only time, like when I started playing, it was indie stuff, uh, in the, 2008, 2009. And that scene was a lot like stiffer, and um, like people didn't seem to be having as good of a time. There's a little bit of snobbery. The bands weren't really as nice. It was just colder. And so when I switched, now like every show I go to or play is, everybody is super nice. All the musicians are like, they're all super cool and nice. Everybody that I've gotten to meet, and supportive, and they all kind of also know each other. It seems like it's a very small world. But what was the question? The crowd.
Yeah,
I mean, as long as there is a crowd, then it is a little weird. Okay. I guess like this last, we did have a couple weird experiences, because on our last couple shows in Vermont and Massachusetts, one of the shows we were paired with an acoustic singer-songwriter, and a lot of the people, they were like a local, so a lot of the people there were there for her. So during our set, it's very different. It was like electronic, dance music with like loud guitar and stuff. So we were kind of like, I don't know if they're gonna like it, or if like they didn't come for this. So that can sometimes like mentally make it a little harder to get in the zone if you're thinking about that stuff. And then one of the other shows, like the crowd was all like much older than what we're used to. It's like 40 to 80-year olds. It was like an outdoor like lawn type of thing. But it turned out like the oldest lady there was the one that was having the best time. She was like in the front dancing. And when I saw that, that was one of those times where I looked up from what I was doing, and I saw this like the oldest lady there was like having such a good time, and that made me smile for sure. Um, but in general, yeah, if there's a crowd and they're there to see music, it's great. There's been a couple events where music is kind of it's not a music centric event. There just happens to be music there, and I don't really like doing those. Those don't really seem to be very impactful, where it's like this other event, but there's also a band. We've done some of those, and those just never seem. It's so much different whenever people are coming there to see music because they like music, and that's they want it. And there's certain cities for sure, like Columbus at the Summit Music Hall, and just like at all the festivals in Ohio, like the crowd there is so enthusiastic about music, and they're so receptive, and it's amazing. And then Burlington was like that too. That was seemed like people were just very receptive to and wanted, like, hungry for music.
Yeah, Ohio people, they really love music. It's everyone I met from there, it seems to be really into it, which is pretty cool. And
Yeah.
yeah, I totally feel you on if people are there for music or not. It affects you even in the crowd too. Like funny enough, I really like the blues. I grew up playing and listening to a lot of it, and we went to a blues fest a couple years ago now, thinking it was a blues fest, but really it was like an eating fest. And we went there to go listen to music, and the music was good, but everyone around us was just really into eating the food trucks that were there. And
Yeah.
within like 15 minutes, we were looking at each other like, we're gonna get out of here. This isn't it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's totally different, like, if that same band were in a venue that, that was the focal point. It's totally yeah, it totally feels different. And, yeah, I feel like that affects me as a performer, because like, now I'm just used to playing in venues where people are there for the show. So, if I'm playing and it seems like people aren't interested or something, it, definitely, like, makes you feel self-conscious a bit. Or if there's nobody there, which I've played a couple of those shows where there's literally nobody there, then that feels really weird. That's not a good feeling.
Yeah, yeah, but
Kinda just funny, but
those are good moments though. It gets you used to like that. To keep the habit of doing it and build some calluses. That's still good.
yeah, it's the rite of passage for any performer. You gotta have definitely gonna have some bad shows.
Yeah, totally. You don't want the worst thing that could happen to you, and really anything, is that you rocket up to the height, or some height that's up there, and then it's not until you get there that you experience your first failure or your first bad experience. Because
It's a good point. Yeah.
you know what I mean. You have no. I mean, like I'm in a lot of different fields, and in tech in particular. Like every time I see somebody who their first startup just rockets, I'm always like, oh, dude, be careful. Like so much of what got you there is luck and timing. And I'm not saying that hard work isn't there, but once you're up there, it's a really long fall to go down, and that's going to be really hard to get up past that. Like in music, the second album, making a good second album is
Oh,
difficult.
yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's definitely, I could see that, yeah. I feel like, any opportunity that we've gotten, like, we've been at a point where we're ready for that, and I feel like that'll be the way it'll keep going. Because sometimes I look at some of these shows, like these massive productions, and like, man, that's a lot. I don't know how, like playing at Red Rocks or something. I feel like bands they get these opportunities when they've they've reached a point where they're ready in all of these different aspects. But yeah, I agree. If you just went straight to just massive success, yeah, without any of the experience or knowledge of you know all the stuff that goes into getting there, it's definitely would be very easy to get lost or not know how to handle certain things. But
or lose what got you there in the first place, right?
yeah,
But
yeah, no worries about getting there too quick for Chalk Dinosaur. It's been probably like 15 years now, so taking the long way.
hey, that's what is it? There's this phrase that I heard recently that I'm trying to propagate. It's long road, high altitude. So it's totally fine. You'll get that's even more apropos of high altitude with Red Rocks being evoked here. So when you get to that mile high, I will definitely be on a plane with some tickets to go check that out. 'Cause I think that'll
Nice.
be a hell of a show. Be a banger for sure.
Yeah, that'll be cool. I think yeah, whenever we get the opportunity, it'll be at a point where we're ready to take that opportunity. But if we were given that opportunity a couple years ago, we wouldn't be ready. We wouldn't be able to do it. I mean, we could. It just like I feel like it'll come when we're ready.
Yeah, that's a
But there's also no like there's no I don't know. I guess there's no ultimate like destination I'm trying to get to. Like ultimately just like recording and writing and releasing all the music is like what I love to do, and regardless of, you know, performance success or like notoriety is it's like irrelevant to that.
where does that come from? Because one of the things I wanted to ask you is, a lot of your music evokes, almost meditation, positivity, like what you just said right there. Of it's about the journey, not the destination. Uh, where does that philosophy come from? Is that just your personal ethos? Do you have, do you study certain things? I don't want to lead you too much. I guess I'll just pause there.
I think I started to think about that stuff in probably like 2014 through 2016. Kind of went through a period where I was kind of examining things a little more and started to get into meditation. I read a book called Mindfulness in Plain English
Hmm.
that was very I don't know, I really liked that book. And then also read a book called The Artist's Way, I think it's called. Julia Cameron. Artist's Way, I think it is. And that book was awesome. That was like that's where I got started with journaling, like doing daily, 3 pages of journaling, like stream of consciousness journaling. And kind of between those two things, I kind of was getting into more of just that like philosophy, self-help type of, you know, psychology stuff. And that's kind of just that kind of has definitely shaped my outlook and my approach since then. Um, so yeah, I've definitely just been like drawing from a lot of similar themes like since then about just like perception and perspective and you know uh well there's more, but I can't remember. There's definitely topics that I talk about a lot, I feel like, in the songs.
No, yeah, it comes through. My wife actually, she's the one who got into you first. I think she's even a bigger fan of yours than I. You actually sent her a T-shirt twice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Raina?
Raina, yeah,
Cool.
yeah. But she was noticing that, and when she first got into listening to you, I like she would play it in the car, and I would be liking the riffs and being catchy to it. But that was what really drew her in, was how positive your music is, because her and
Oh,
I are both
nice.
really big audiophiles, and one of the things that we talk about is uh, what the music's content is seeps into you, and it can kind
Yeah,
of raise you up, or it can suck away from you almost, and sometimes
I agree.
if it's a sad song or if it's an angry song, like that's totally something that maybe you need in that moment to get that out of you. But if it's something
Mhm.
that you're just kind of, I don't want to say mindlessly, habitually just having on, like that's going to definitely
Yeah,
seep into you. And
I
one of the
agree.
things that really comes out in your music, which kudos to you, because it sounds like it's intentional, which is what I was trying not to lead you into. I was curious if it is intentional, is positivity, working on yourself. Like the one that Raina wanted me to bring up to you was pattern recognition. And something along the lines of how you say in the song, "Tomorrow is like another chance to recognize the patterns you're falling into." And I think that
Yeah,
that is it's so profound in such a subtle way, because I think music is such a great way. I think all art is, a way to kind of get you outside of yourself and see things from a different, perspective. I think, like George Carlin in comedy, like talk about an
mhm.
epic way to just call out
Yeah,
society and all the bullshit,
love him.
but there's other ways to do that as well. And like pattern recognition, for example, like do you walk into that song trying to have that type of concept coming out of it? Is it just something you're journaling about? And is it intentional that you're trying to make music about these type of things, or is it just really the embodiment of the fingerprint of who you are in that moment?
I think a portion of it's definitely intentional because I feel like I noticed what you were talking about where, music has so much power to change the way you feel. It can, like, instantly change the way you feel in a pretty strong way sometimes, and, I mean, my first 2 albums, that was, like, a lot of sad, heartbreak type of stuff. I was also, like, really into Death Cab for Cutie and Weezer at the time, and, that's how I was processing that at the moment, but, like, once I started, kind of realizing that, there's a lot of music that makes me feel just good, and I just, started to want that, as much of that as I could, like, listening, just stuff that makes me feel good and or makes me think about things, and, you kinda get to choose the emotions that you wanna, inject, which is what you were saying, and, so naturally, I think, since that's the kinda music I gravitate towards, that's a lot of what comes out, um, and there's, like, a maybe an occasional sadder or, like, more somber song, but it's I don't know, I just don't like doing that anymore unless, I don't know, even if I'm, like, depressed about something, I still wanna make, like, a happy song, like, something that like, is positive and because that can I don't know, it just, makes me feel better and regardless of what, you know, emotional state I'm in. Uh, so for pattern recognition, that was a song my brother had, like, the basic idea for that song, and then we kinda fleshed out the instrumentals together and with the band, and then he felt like there needed to be something else, like vocals maybe. So that was an instance where we had the song pretty much the instrumentals were written, but there were these spaces where we were like, "Well, there needs to be something here." So that was an instance where I was trying to come up with a lyric and vocal part for, like, an existing, piece of instrumental music. And I think the process for coming up with words, a lot of times it's, like, mumbling mumbling, like, melody, kinda, like, trying to get, like, a rhythm and a melody. And sometimes through that, you'll start to like mumble out a phrase or like a word or even, yeah, just like a fragment that can spark an idea. Like, it might have started out with tomorrow brings us another. That might have been like the first line that I came up with. And then the rest of it kind of just like I was able to extrapolate from that. But yeah, that's typically harder for me to do, like fit a vocal into an existing, like fully developed thing. It usually works out better when it's being developed at the same time. Kind of like, I don't know. I feel like the times it goes together the best are usually when it's like the words and like the core of the song are first. Like if you can play it on an instrument and sing it at the same time, kind of thing. Just like the most basic core of the song is there. That's usually
But yeah, no, I can understand that where it's hard to fix a melody or words to a melody that already exist unless you're kind of fleshing it out. Because like I'm not a terribly big fan of John Mayer's music. I definitely liked his Continuum album, and I really got into it when that came out. I do like his guitar playing and his general tone he has, but I really like listening to him lately. I've been catching him on some podcasts. Other than sometimes cringing at how much he takes over the conversation, his little nuggets of the creative process I find so fascinating. And he was on Rick Rubin's podcast. I think it's Tetragrammaton, and he was talking about exactly what you were just saying about the process of how trying to fit syllables, but then also syllables to what is your vocal range and what you can actually
right.
sound, the tone of the sound, all that kind of stuff. It's interesting. It's like those little subtleties that kind of separate the garage bands from the more rounded professionals. Um, but going back to the beginning, like liking Death Cab at that period of life, it's I think definitely it probably speaks more to your age because I could think of being a young dude and constantly like, what are women? How do I? Yeah, that's so much heartbreak, so difficult. How does this
Yeah.
happen? And being a younger person versus growing out of that a little bit and being able to uh, understand yourself and grow a little bit more. Um, and in general, the content I think you take in, I think has such an impact in it. And I think nowadays it's so
Oh yeah.
difficult because everything is just streamed to you, given to you, and you can fall into these echo chambers. And the algorithms can just feed you an echo chamber of what you have, and it's gonna it's just selecting for engagement. So if you end up liking a lot of things that are more of a certain vein, if it's negativity or just showing you a bunch of videos of people getting hurt or things like that, you can
Oh yeah.
quickly fall into a trap where that ends up affecting you. You don't even realize it, right? The same with the music, but now it's I think much
Yeah.
bigger. Um, you know,
Oh man. Yeah.
something I noticed when I was younger was I go through bouts of depression. It's kind of something I've had. I think a lot of people struggle with it. I've had that for a long time, and one of the things that I realized that was a really nice way to get out of it was forcing myself right when I wake up to go for a walk and listen to James Brown. And how
Oh
if I just
nice.
put on Live at the Sex Machine and I just listened to that album, every day for 2 months, by the end of the second month, 60 days later, all of a sudden I'm noticing more things, I'm smiling more, and it can really really shift your mood. Um, so it's amazing that you're intentional with what you produce and put out there because that's something I think the world needs more of. And I would like to just bracket for like a little bit to go hardcore into music. So we might lose some people, but I'll chapter this. But we might lose some
Sure.
people who are not more in the musical realm, but that's okay. Uh, I want to ask you about starting off with. So I'm a guitar player. I've been playing guitar since I was very young. How do you construct your solos? And how do you think about that? Because, for example, I've noticed, okay, so I did pick up on the fact you're using a Stratocaster on Fire at the Beach. And did using a Stratocaster change the notes that you chose? And do you think of it intentionally like, oh, I'm playing, a third here, I'm going to a fifth, I'm going to flat this, I'm going to go over to this area, I'm going to go up the neck? Or are you just closing your eyes, seeing what feels good? Or is it all written out? Are you Jimmy, what would that be? Kind of the guitarist from Queen, writing it all out and just going into the studio and recording it, or
Oh
are
wow.
you Frank Zappa and just seeing what comes?
I would like to be able to think about it and like know where the ninth and the third is at all times, but I don't have that. I don't have the fretboard that internalized, so most of it is doing a lot of takes, playing over it a lot, recording a ton of takes, and finding the licks that I like the phrases that I like within that. Sometimes it gets ridiculous. Sometimes that it'll be like 50 or 100 takes, and I kind of just keep playing it until I find like, oh, I like this phrase here, and then I save that chunk and kind of just go through the amount of time that I have until I've got every part, um, all the phrases that I like the most figured out, and then I might try to go through and play it all in a take, like a continuous take, just because it for continuity. That's one way that I'll do the solos. So, but there are a couple other ones like where I'll do 5 takes, and in those 5 takes there will be enough, or even maybe just a whole solid take that I really like. But for a lot of like the fast more technical stuff, it's like that has to I have to kind of piece that together and then like learn that sequence of notes. I think like some of the Fire on the Beach stuff was like a pretty it came together pretty quickly. Like I didn't have to do a million takes. Like I was able to kind of just feel it out. But most of the time it's a lot of takes and a lot of consideration on like what phrases to use. And then with playing the Stratocaster, definitely like impacted the notes I played and the phrasing, because it had a whammy bar, which I love, and I really like. I really want to get a guitar with a whammy bar, because what it does for me is it creates more space in my solos, because I'll hit a note and I'll let it ring so that I can bend it and kind of have it sing, and that kind of just naturally creates phrasing, like breaks in the string of notes, because without it, it's easy for me to fall into just notes all the time, just too many notes. Um, I find like that's the hardest part for me, is trying to get it to not just be like a string of notes the whole time. And sometimes like singing along with the solo, it helps me kind of form more of like stronger melodic lines instead of just like noodling, I guess you could call it. But yeah, the Stratocaster definitely changed the way I played. I didn't use it on Fire on the Beach though, because I didn't have it yet. But for the rest of the album, there's a lot of there's a lot of times where I have to stop picking so I can you know hit the whammy bar.
Yeah. There's a quote that I thought was Stevie Wonder's, but it turns out he just took it from somebody else too, who I always forget. But it's music isn't the notes, but the space between them, and that was something that took me a while. I mean, I feel like I struggle with, where it's like, oh, I just want to
Same.
keep smashing things because it's fun,
Yeah.
but it's not as much fun. It's interesting between the person who's hitting the notes and the person listening to it. There's some kind of sometimes an uncanny valley, to be able to play with. Um, yeah, sorry for hitting on Fire on the Beach so much. I don't even know why I keep doing that. It's too much of a groove. But
Oh no, I'm happy to talk about it.
what I mean, well, one more thing before I ask the next question is, I definitely have noticed, even in my own time playing, where when I switch guitars with somebody, like my buddy had a PRS, and I play a Strat, and giving him the Strat and seeing what he would do with it, I'd almost be like, give it back to me. I want to try that. Like, give me that. I've never thought of that. And what
Yeah.
comes out of it is so interesting. Um, what is your guitar and music setup? Like, what type of instruments do you like to use and play with?
I've been using a Gibson ES335 semi hollow body guitar for since I started, pretty much, and that's been the only one. Um, So I use that and a Fender Twin Reverb, and then Fender Jazz Bass, acoustic guitar. But yeah, the ES335's been the guitar for since 2007,
Oh wow.
and yeah, probably the Strat with the whammy bar will be the next one, and then I don't really have any. I don't know if I'll have a desire for any more guitars. I have a problem with keyboards, so that's kind of where there's just so many available that are like interesting to me. The problem is I have a lot and I can't. I have too many. Like I can't like use them all.
What are your go-tos?
I get the Prophet 6 is like my main performance keyboard, and then the top keyboard is a Behringer DeepMind 6, but it used to be a Moog Little Fatty, which
Ooh.
is on the desk in front of me. But I wanted something smaller because for the traveling, like packing into the car, like the Moog case was massive, so I just wanted like a smaller keyboard that could more or less do the same thing. Then occasionally, like, well, for bass, the Moog Minotaur is amazing. That thing is really simple, but just always sounds good. And I have a Virus. It's called a Virus. It's been around for a long time, and it's like a digital synth, but it's really good for like rhythmic, very electronic, like trancey
Hmm.
sounds. But yeah, the main ones are the Moog and the Prophet. That's what I use the most for.
Yeah. Guitars you can make them a little more versatile with the pedals. You know what I mean? Pedals and amps, like that, the combination between that, you can just stretch out so much. Um,
Yeah.
I used to really want an ES or like a jazz box, something more hollow to kind of ring it out. I play a lot of jazz too, but lately, the more I've been playing anything other than a Stratocaster, I don't know if it's something with my age now. I've just hit a precipice, but I just feel like a Strat has ruined me for every other guitar. Like even my acoustic, I get so annoyed because it's a like glued on neck, like like a violin. It's not a bolt on, and the fact that
Hmm.
it's so much harder for me to like grip the guitar with my thumb at the higher frets, I just get I'm so annoyed with it lately. I don't even know what it is, but
So it's like the playability that you like of the Strat.
Uh, I mean, the action of a Strat, I can't get away from. I feel like it's so much faster. I hate any gloss on the neck. I've always
Oh
hated
yeah.
that, but it's just the older I get, the more that I'm just annoyed by it. Um, and I do play with my thumb, so I like the Hendrix is he got me really into it. So like being able to
Hmm.
press down on the top or in the bottom two strings, like I really like being able to do that. It just opens up so much for me. Um, but I like the bolt on too because I like being able to really rock the neck because like you have the whammy bar where you can lift up the bridge, but you can also really rock the neck on a Strat and not worry about
Yeah.
anything. You know what I mean? And not worry about
Right.
your
Yeah.
action is going to get messed up. I like low action once again. A Strat's perfect for that. And the single coil overwound, I just feel like has such a raw sound that I can layer so much on top of. Um, I do. The next guitar I get's probably going to be a PRS though, where you have like I don't remember what they're called, but you can
Yeah.
have the humbucker or single coil flip.
Yeah.
That to me is just unreal.
Split coil. Yeah. That was like it was. That was the other guitar that I was trying to decide between when I was getting my guitars. The PRS. I didn't know anything about guitars. I was kind of just playing them all, and like those. I remember those felt really good to play. But the Strat is like the tone is so much different than like the humbucker tone. It handles a lot differently. But like and at first I was like, oh, this sounds like so bright and tinny. But once I was able to kind of mess around more with the tone knob and like my overdrive pedals and stuff, it has like so much more clarity, especially when you have overdrive.
Yes,
You can even like hit chords and it doesn't, when I do that on my guitar, it's like very easily turns into just mush. But there's just so much definition with the single coil that I really like.
it's so unforgiving though.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Any wrong note
definitely.
or any like I just you scratch it too much or you're sliding your finger too much if you're pumping up the electricity too much, you just like you get that, you know what I mean? It picks up everything.
Yeah, definitely. I was really yeah, like that the bridge pickup is so sharp sounding. Um but I found that if I was messing around with rolling the tone all the way down and using the bridge pickup, like the really bright thin one, and then putting overdrive on it, it had a really cool tone to it.
Yeah. I like dropping the tone knobs to 0 and then cranking cranking distortion,
Yeah.
overdrive, giving a little reverb to it. You can really make it sound rough. I like that a lot.
Yeah, but it's not, yeah, it'll be like clear but not like shrill. Like with my guitar, if I turn the tone knob all the way down, there's no it loses all the definition, but I feel like with the Strat it still has clarity.
Yeah, which is another. I like the Ibanez for the same reason. But once you do something similar to that, all of a sudden you kind of you get a very metal sound to it, which is also really fun. Um, I like Ibanez as well for that. I've been getting into like I don't know why I've been getting this like really wild Steve Vai, Joe Satriani bend. Like I've been just going real hard into them, and the more
Nice.
that I've been listening to it, the more I'm like, man, I just want to like get an Ibanez and just start doing some hammer-ons and like like finger tapping. Like this seems just seems wild. It's such a different, I don't know, variation of guitar.
Yeah, I've never played one like that, like a are the pickups like really hot or something? Is
Very,
it
yeah, very hot, very speedy. Like it's all of the action that I'm talking about on a Stratocaster, but it's more tailored for speed playing. Like
yeah.
I have a Strat that my buddy rebuilt for me actually. So everything on the Stratocaster except for the wood is brand new that he put on there. He custom it out for me, which is really awesome. Because once again, I until he did that, I didn't realize that how you even wire the electronics on it will affect the tone, the sound, like all of that. But anyways, I have a lock on the pegs, like the tuning forks at the top.
Yeah.
But on Ibanez's, they'll have it on both ends of it. The bridge will have a lock, and the head of the guitar will have locks on the strings. So if you really whammy, that string is going to go right back into tune, right?
That's
You're gonna
cool.
snap them more. You'll have to end up with snapped strings more often. But if it doesn't break and you keep changing the strings out enough, like you're gonna have tone once again. You could really like raise up a high bend, go back down. It's not gonna lose the tone or any of that stuff. Because like the saddle, I think it's called saddle pickup or saddle bridge, where you have a little on the Stratocaster, you have like the two different screws that hold the string to
Mhm.
string on there. Um,
Yeah.
you have to constantly be fiddling with those every few months. Otherwise, the action is going to change, or you're going to bend up and it'll lose the ring or any of that kind of stuff. Where the more Ibanez's are real locked into place because it's essentially like Eddie Van Halen or Joe Satriani type of sound.
A lot of bending and whammying. Yeah, they seem like sports cars.
Yes.
Like they just handle really fast and well. I have my first guitar was a Schecter, which I didn't know at the time, but that a lot of metal players
Mm-hmm.
play those, it seems like. Um, but that one's like feels like that. It's just super easy to play. It's got 24 frets, so it's just like tons of room. Always stays in tune. Doesn't have any like blocking stuff, but just more than other guitars I played, it's always the setup is always good and intonation's always there.
Yeah, it's very similar to what we're describing. I like to think in my head, I think of Stratocasters as like Ford F-150s or Mustangs, where it's like what you're gonna get, you can beat the hell out of them, but there's such a culture of modding them out and really making it whatever it is your own, and it's yeah, I don't know, I find it very fun. I could talk about this all day. What is your practice regimen like? Do you have one? Like, especially given the fact that you play multi instruments, like do you go in there? Do you have exercises that you do, or is it more just based off of what you were describing earlier of kind of walking in with a canvas and seeing what comes out.
Yeah, I definitely don't have a regimen. Um, I get most of my practice from recording. So whenever I'm working on a song and I need to do guitar parts, that's where I get all my mechanical practice in because I end up playing for several hours and you know playing until my fingers are raw and like hands hurt and that's really like and that's also how I practice any of the other instruments. If I want drums or bass on a song, so I'll play that until I'm able to play the thing that I want to be in the song. Um, yeah, pretty much just like recording. I feel like that's been such a good way for me to practice because it's very engaging and I can spend a long time doing it and be having fun with it. But it doesn't so much help like the conceptual stuff, which I've gone through spurts of trying to become more like what's the word like fluent in like music theory and stuff, but that would take a regimen, I think, to really internalize all that information and be able to use it in a meaningful way and not have to like I would have to sit there and think about like like what is in this thing. I don't know. It just like it has to be internalized, I feel like, to be able to use it in like a live playing situation where it's like, oh, we're switching to this key or like what is different about what are the different notes and stuff. And I just never got to the point where I have all that information on tap and I can you know instantly know what all the right notes are and what all the wrong notes are.
Yeah, that's which is totally all right. I mean, you got this far, but also some of the grades tend to try to throw that out. And then you're talking about the indie music scene of snobbery. There's so much snobbery around music theory and
Oh yeah.
and knowing it and all of that kind of stuff. Um, do you use any of that though? Like, do you use the circle of fifths or any type of chord arrangements or phrases when you're writing a song, or is it really just playing around, seeing grooving? I mean, obviously you have an understanding of the keys in a fretboard, right? Like you know from playing so long, what kind of fits in where and how to play with the minors to bring it down, or bringing it back up
Yeah.
with some majors. And like, do you think of it
Yeah.
more in that way of like the tone and knowing where it is on a fretboard, or do you have some kind of understanding of oh, I want to hit this segment of the key, and then I want to go to this one, and I want to bring it down this way? How do you go about that?
I'll use it sometimes in situations of like complementary keys, um resolving a chord progression, uh you know knowing that the 2-5-1 chord progression, is just like a very good way to get back to the one chord, or even just going to the 5 chord is a very good way to get back to the one chord. I don't know, like stuff like that. Sometimes it can help to if I'm trying to like get from one if I have a long chord progression, I'm trying to get to another key or another or just get back to the beginning of the chord progression. Um I feel like on a keyboard it's like a lot easier for me to visualize and like play around with chords and different keys and stuff. But a lot of it is just by ear and like I might hear something cool in a song that I really like and then I'll kind of reverse engineer that like what just happened, what was that key change, because that sounded really cool, and then find out a way to like use that kind of just on a it's not like a holistic understanding, but it's like I understand this one move and then find a way to use that at some point and maybe understand some other move. Like I was listening to the Lion King uh Circle of Life song, and there's like this key change or chord change in there that I was like really, really liked and didn't understand what was happening. So that was an instance where I was like, what is that interval? Like, what is going on there? I figured out what it was, and then I ended up using it in a song uh, shortly after.
What was the song?
It's a song called um, uh, "Here to Stay." It's it's on the EP "Sink or Swim," and yeah, there's like a definitely ripped the Elton John Lion King special chord change for that song.
That's amazing. I'm gonna listen to that after we get off. That's awesome. What are your influences? You know, musically or otherwise, that you're drawing some inspiration from. Like, you know, I guess starting with what is it kind of the things that you listen to a lot? Like, what's your mix CDs lately?
Yeah, I get inspiration for different things from different artists. So like there are certain artists that I really get a lot of inspiration from their production and like their compositions, the way they put things together, like Tame Impala, Currents, that album, and I think Slow Rush is the next one. But like the way those songs are put together and mixed and everything, just the aesthetic is really inspiring. Like Tycho, the way he puts his music together and the sounds and just like the aesthetic of it all is definitely very inspiring for me. Khruangbin,
Hmm.
they have their own aesthetic too. These are all bands that have like a very distinct sound. Like when you put it on, you know what you're gonna get. They have this very distinct aesthetic, and that's what it is. And I like all those. And then there's Ween, which is another one of my big influences, and they're a band that just bounces around. Every song is like they embody like a different style, but they do a really good job with it, and been a big influence in terms of feeling okay to not be confined into a genre, like to feel okay making music of any style. That was a big influence in just making me feel like that was okay to do. And so Ween's a big influence. My Morning Jacket, just his songwriting and vocals are some of my favorites. So that's a huge influence. Um, and then for like electronic music and like music production type of influences, there's this producer named Oliver, and he's got this album called Full Circle, and it's like my bar for electronic music production. And it's their songs too. But just the production is so tight and like loud and clean. Like I don't know how that's like the thing I'm trying to like that's what I'm referencing, like how close can I get to that level, cuz that's my you know that's like the best sounding stuff to me. And then there's another album called Pleasure Center by this group called Crack and Smack with a Kraak, Pleasure Center. And that one's like another one of those kind of bar setters for me. It's got like a vintage vibe to it, but it's very also modern at the same time. It's like electronic but organic sounding, and I like the songs on it. I mean, those two albums have been kind of on. I've been playing those a lot recently. And then like for live shows, that's another set of influences. Bands like Lotus and Papadozio and Lettuce and so many other bands in that jam scene are put on such an amazing show, and they're so amazing at their instruments. That's like another level, like another area of inspiration that's kind of separate. I don't know, they kind of all have influences in separate areas. And then Wolfpack, they've been a huge inspiration, like with their music, but also with their career arc and like the way that they do things. So very different and refreshing to see a band get really successful on a different path than doing like 10 years of like 150 shows a year in a, before you start to get that. Like they found out another way to do it. I mean, Daft Punk for sure, Air. Yeah, I don't know. That probably covers most of it. I guess there's like some surf stuff that's kind of creeps into a lot of playing, like 60s surf, like the Ventures. I was really into the Ventures and Arthur Lyman, like exotica vibraphone stuff. Went through a phase where I was just going to the record store and getting records off the dollar out of the dollar bin just based on like just looking at the most random kind of instrumental albums, like Dulcimer album, or just I don't know. That would be like a meditation music type of. I would put on some random record, looking for like sampling stuff, like stuff I could sample, pretty much. But ended up liking, just like listening to a lot of it and liking it. I think that's it though. That's it.
That's a huge spectrum. Like I can see why your music is so varied. That's an amazing spectrum. Yeah, Papadocio and Lotus. I mean, Docio is so their performances live are amazing. Like the way they can play off of each other is unreal. And I love Wolfpack. I think Wolfpack is both, like you said, both from how they make their music, of how they record it, all the way through the
Yeah,
live performances.
iPhone, just the low tech home recording, phone camera, but it just proves that you don't need a lot. You just need good ideas and good, playing, and just it's great.
Yeah, for them in particular, like the pocket between them, like how they each
Yeah.
find the groove is so unbelievable to me. Like I've been listening to 3 on E like on repeat a
Mhm.
lot lately, cuz I watched the YouTube video of it, and I love how Jack has the process of we're gonna take it all in one take. We'll mix anything afterwards. Any effects we want to put on it, changing the levels, we'll do it later. We're gonna have a camera going through the shot of us recording it, and there's a part in it where it's just Theo and Corey playing pretty much, and then all of a sudden, the bassist Joe Dart comes in and starts speeding it up, and then Jack starts speeding it up too, and you could just see how they all caught a groove together. It's just like catching a wave, and everyone's party wave surfing, and it's unreal how they can catch those different pockets and expand off of it. They're really impeccable.
Yeah, super super good, and I don't think I really like, I went through a phase where I was just listening to podcasts with whatever members did podcast, whatever members I could find, and their approach is just, like, so appealing because it's like a Corey Wong was talking about, Wolfpack is like a 30-day a year commitment,
Yeah.
like, that's their like, in terms of shows, recording, it's like they somehow, just have it so efficient that 30 days is what they're committed to, and it's like seems very sustainable, and it's also working very well. Obviously, you have to have like a group of really, really talented people to do that, but I was like, this just sounds like way better than, you know, burning yourself out, which is, I mean, I heard Jack talk about that. Like, that's what he doesn't want to do, ruin the band by burning themselves out on the road or something.
Yeah. I mean, playing off that a little bit, when you're mixing music or you're playing with with the band, or how do you think about the different pockets? So like to try to make it a little more layman, like pocket in music is finding your space within the rest of the instruments, within the rest of the sounds, and being able to really fill it in, right? So like I think something that the two things that make me cringe as a guitarist is when I hear somebody solo for so long. It just feels like you're uh I don't know, showing off or something. I have a much cruder way that I think about it that I won't say out loud. And then
I think I know.
the other side of it
Thank you.
is, a lot of times when you have two guitars on stage, it's like I was at a show last weekend, and I kept thinking, you guys got to play with each other, not against each other.
Yeah.
So how do you construct that? Is, either from your own self, and once again, I'm going to keep playing with this because, I think it's interesting that you get to construct music by yourself, where it's yourself playing with you, over with and over yourself. But how do you think about, layering and finding that groove? Is it even a conscious thought?
Yeah, no, it definitely is. It's definitely something that I put a lot of thought into in terms of how the drums, the bass, just how everything is like working with and like around each other. So I mean, like, I feel like the more I make, the better, or like the more cognizant I am of not having things constantly playing. So trying to make like parts that have space in them has been like my new like thing that I try to focus on. So a lot of times I'll record a part and then I'll start to like cut stuff out of that part and be like, oh, well, what if like the chord only hit every, 4 beats instead of every 1 beat or something? Or like I don't know, but a lot of times like a rhythm guitar will be hitting be try you know I'll try to be hitting like in between when the drums and the bass are going or something. Either that or I mean just making like complementary parts, I guess, where they're either playing in unison and harmonizing, or they're playing like differing things that are filling gaps within each other. So, and definitely like with the bass and drums, I try to either do the same thing. They're either locked in together to kick in the bass, or the bass is hitting all around the kick and not on the kick, and they only have their own space. But I mean, in our live band, our full band 4-person thing, a lot of times we'll do a lot of like harmonized guitar melodies, and so if one of us writes a guitar melody, a lot of times we'll end up both playing it either in unison or harmonizing, and then I don't know. A lot of times, whoever comes up with the idea, like for Stuck in Between, my brother Nick came up with the guitar parts for like the main riff, I guess. So he kind of put those together, and whenever I make an idea, I'll sometimes write, the complementary guitar parts. Same thing with when our other guitar player writes. Um, yeah, I don't know. I guess like if we're trying to write all together when we're jamming, it's at least from my perspective, I'm trying to hear what the other guitar player is doing and then find where the space is in that and play around that. So, if it's a melody that plays a couple notes and then it rings out for a little bit, I'll maybe not play anything when he's doing the melody, and then when he's done playing the melody, do something else there. Kind of fill the gaps.
Yeah. Listening, I think, is the key takeaway there.
I think Grizz said one. I saw like a
Of
Grizz.
course, yeah. I saw him at Red Rocks, actually.
Oh, was it fun?
That was unreal. Yeah, it was a 2-day thing. Like the first night was live band, and the second night was like him and what's his with the bear? What's his guitarist?
Muzzy Bear?
Yeah, yeah, it was him and that, and then we also went to an afters with that. No, so it was like a 3 performance thing, and honestly, it was so unbelievably inspiring, and also it just blew me away because you had the live band night, one feel, you know, kind of more like a docio set of experience where it's just a lot of lights and like the production was a certain way, and then the second night where it's him and Muggsy, it was very high production, something more like you'd get with an EDM set where the visuals are
Yeah.
going. I think there was even a point where he just came out of the middle with the piano, like a live piano, like just totally brought the intensity up. And then seeing him in the afters was like a dark vibe, like a dark EDM vibe. um, and just
Wow.
how the spectrum of how prolific he was. Which this is when I first started getting into EDM music, so it just completely blew me away of how
That's
somebody
awesome.
could have such a difference, uh, you know, in his, I guess, repertoire. Because I mean, he's a sax player, but clearly can do a
Yeah.
whole lot more.
I'll have to check out that live band set. I've never I'd, like, seen it on festival bills and stuff, but I've never heard it. Curious what that's like. But he had, like, a, production tips, you know, Instagram or TikTok or something, and he's like he was talking about making a groove, and he's like, "It's all about the stuff in between the stuff." It's like, always thought about that. Like, it definitely is. There's always a lot of stuff in between all the other stuff with his, beats.
The space between the notes.
Yes,
Yeah.
just finding yeah, and I remember, yeah, never mind.
Okay. You look like you're close to something though.
I think I was just talking about I mess around that with that concept on the drum set. I've been messing around more with that, like, instead of having, hi-hat going every beat, not playing the hi-hat when the kick or the snare's hitting, like, making beats where only one drum is hitting at a time, so that has, like, the full space. And that was, like, the Fire on the Beach main groove was one of those where I was like, "It's only kick, snare, hi-hat happening. I'm not doing them at the same time ever." I was, like, messing around with that, and it definitely does groove more when it's, you know, there's things just filling gaps and not covering other things up.
Yeah, there's a drummer I just started getting into. Um, I don't know. I have maybe it's part of my addictive personality, but I get into things and I get really into them. But I fell into him and I've been pretty into it lately. It's Nate Smith. Have you ever heard of him?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and his album
Yeah.
Pocket Change. I've listened to that album probably like 4 or 5 times in the past 3 days.
I've never listened to any of his. I've only just heard the Fearless Flyer stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, his the Pocket Change is just him. It's just him on the drums, and it's exactly
Whoa.
what you're talking about. It's I was completely thrown when I first listened to it a few days ago of how much he's just changing up the beat with the different things, but highlighting it. Like he'll just be tapping the hi hat at a certain tempo, and then all of a sudden have that tempo, but now switching to the snare, and he's doing something else with, you know what I mean? It's just constantly shuffling it around. And talk about completely turning things on their head, where you have an album that's just, I think there's a bass sometimes in there, but it's pretty much just him on the drums the whole time, and
Wow.
it's captivating, which you wouldn't think.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I've never heard just a drum set album. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's not just like a drum solo, you know what I mean? Where most drum solos I
Yeah.
kind of cringe at.
Yeah, there's definitely a good way and a bad way. Yeah, I'm not a bad way, just yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, I'm super snobby when it comes to certain things. I'm a bit self aware of that. Uh, how do you think about time in music, and I guess in life too? Because a lot of your songs also in the lyrics reference time and things changing, and
Yeah.
like in Cosmic Favor, you talk about how it favors the young at heart, and you talk a lot about it. And that whole album, you talk a lot about time and all of
Yeah, a
that.
lot of time.
Yeah.
How do I think about time?
Do you even think about it? Because the way I'm asking, because like in music is just time. It's just
Yeah,
tones and time. That's really all it is. And
let me
really,
think, like
the way I think
oh,
about
sorry.
oh yeah, the way I think about life is just that too. There's moments, and the moments have color, and the emotion, and the emotion is essentially the tempo or the tone, um, and you flow through it, and it changes. Or like what you were saying earlier, Death Cab for Cutie is a young man constantly getting your heart broken because you don't really understand what to do with life or love. Uh, is that something that you're conscious of, or is that just something that once again through your mindfulness practices tends to just blossom?
I think something I thought about a lot was how much different time can feel in terms of your perception of it. If I'm looking at my phone, scrolling, or just browsing the internet, like 2 hours can go by and it feels like 30 minutes. But if I'm, trying to meditate and just like sit still and not like engage any thoughts, 15 minutes feels like really, really long. Or if I'm suffering in any way, like time just slows down. And I think, I'm aware of like the acceleration of time as I get older, and how it's just, keeps just going by faster, and every year is a smaller, proportion of my total life, so it's just smaller and smaller. uh I don't know, just keeps going by faster. So I think I was interested in what can I do to slow it down. And there are things that you can do to make time go by slower or faster. If I'm in the airport and I'm stuck at the airport or something, I want time to go faster. So there's things I can do to speed it up. But, if I want it to go slower, yeah, like things like meditation, journaling, exercise, uh, and just not engaging with, technology, you definitely can slow things down. Just paying attention to the time, what day it is. Like, it's easy for me to forget about that stuff.
Yeah, especially with how many distractions we have. Einstein, he wrote these essays. Like I think they just would submit them. Like people would submit questions to him in a newspaper. I think it was like the last couple of years of his life. And one of the questions was, "Can you explain relativity to essentially to like a fifth grader?" I don't think it was what it was, but it was essentially like that. And his answer was, "If you put your hand on a hot stove, that's instant will feel like an eternity. If you're sitting with a partner that you're enjoying their company, that hour or two feels like an instant." He goes, "That's relativity." Um,
Yeah. All right. That's it. That's what I've been thinking about.
yeah, exactly. You're spot on. Yeah, look at that. You're Einsteinian in your groove that you're catching. Um, what's it like living in Pittsburgh and making music versus? So, like, just judging by when you went to college, you're pretty much the same age as me. So we're both, millennials. And when we were younger, and everyone was just like, "You got to move to LA. You want to do music, you got to move to LA."
Yeah.
Or like, what I heard a lot
Right.
was, um, you got to move to Nashville, right? Like you want to be a studio guitarist. Like
Mhm.
everyone, all my guitar teachers, or it was only one guitar teacher, but all of his friends, he used to do that kind of stuff. He was like, "You want to be a studio guitarist?" He's like, "Go to Nashville." He's like, "Go do a bunch of cut a bunch of country records. You'll get known for that. Then you'll get picked up in LA. You can make your way that way." But it was
Mhm.
always you got to go somewhere. You got to do it. And the other thing too that was totally discouraged when we were younger was doing the end to end production yourself. It was always like,
Right.
no, you got to get someone to mix it. You got to get a sound engineer that knows, Logic or something like that that'll do all that for you. Just focus on your instrument. So how did you cut your teeth, and how is it not being in the belly of the beast? Being in Pittsburgh, which isn't necessarily even known as a music city. Um, how has that kind of influence shaped or been able to find your own way?
Um. Yeah. I guess it's hard to say how it. I've never really like lived or experienced another city to know what the difference is, but I would imagine there's probably, there's a lot more people doing the same thing as you. You could probably maybe easily meet other people who you could work with. Um, but I mean, yeah, like the ability to home record and kind of the explosion of the internet really just kind of changed everything for someone who wants to be a producer, or I guess even an artist. Because you have worldwide reach. Everybody does. I feel like there's certain positions where you do need to, you would benefit. If you're trying to get into like pop songwriting or something, moving to Nashville or LA, where there's more people that are doing that you could get involved with. Um, or yeah, like session playing. But I mean, just like writing and recording music, it didn't seem like it really mattered where I was. Like if I was doing the same thing in LA, I don't I don't know if it would have made that much of a difference. Maybe the performing, I don't know, cuz like even still like you're if you're really getting into performing, you're going to be going to other cities outside of your hometown. At least that's like the kind of the goal, I guess, is to branch out and not just be local, but branch out into the region. So, it really didn't matter if I was living in Pittsburgh or Cleveland or Washington D.C. or something. I don't know. It's really hard to say. I'm sure things would have been a lot different, but I'm not sure how. And I definitely don't feel like it's been a hindrance or like like I've been held back by because I live here. I definitely don't feel like that. I don't know. I mean, sometimes I think about if I was in Denver, that might be that seems like a pretty fertile music scene, but there's not a lot around Denver. Like it's not easy to. Your Colorado's kind of its own bubble. Um, Honestly, Pittsburgh's great because there's a lot of good Midwestern music towns. There's a lot of towns within like a kind of a reasonable distance. So, but I mean, my main thing for the longest time was just recording and releasing the music, and the internet gave me the ability to, do that and share that, and it really didn't matter where it was being made. Um, yeah, I don't know.
It's interesting.
Definitely doesn't feel like it held me back or anything.
It's interesting because we're kind of the age that it's the phase shift, right? Like the people when you were starting to get into music, the people who were really popular were still the hangovers of in a certain region, getting into the record, label machine, getting pumped out
Right.
that way. Where now it's like for folks who were in their early 20s who might be getting started on the track, they wouldn't even think about it any other way. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just like the internet is able to bring you that. Um, it's interesting to me because that was it's almost like as time changes, as things get uh the world gets different, I suppose. um the world that was before just gets it's harder even to imagine. And I think in a lot of ways, okay, so like what we were just saying, second album syndrome, right? First album's amazing, second album they can't seem to be able to hit it again. And what I always found interesting from that was, once again, my guitar teacher growing up, um, he had friends who were signed to record deals and things like that. And what he said to me was the reason for that was they got moved to LA. He goes, "Oh yeah, they moved to LA. Now they're in a culture of LA, and they're getting wrapped up into meetings and people offering them whatever drugs they want, and they completely get into this vibe that's different than when they were before. That before they were struggling, they were on the road in a van that was breaking down all the time. They had a way of getting there, but once you're kind of in a completely different environment, it takes away. And one of the things that I was thinking about as you were saying this is, I wonder if being away and well, not your other way, but being in your own way in Pittsburgh was able to insulate yourself enough from, the influences, because the cultures are different, wherever you are, either if it's
Yeah.
opportunities or vices or even just what other people are trying to achieve.
Yeah, and there's probably some insulating factor to that. I don't know. Yeah, it's the internet has created so many different ways to succeed as a creative that it's just the idea that you have to live somewhere is just totally kind of gone unless you want a pretty specific type of like you want to get into the TV industry or some, you know, or like session playing or something. But even like, yeah, um, yeah, I could see that. Like, if you have a really successful album, you're on a label and it explodes, and yeah, you kind of your life changes away from where you were getting your inspiration from before. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. That would be hard too. There's probably a lot of pressure that you feel to create another, maybe you had been these were the 10 best songs you've been collecting for years, and now you have another, year or two to top that, and you have to kind of pull it out of somewhere, which is it's nice. Like, I'm glad I don't have to deal with that kind of pressure of expectations, because that would be difficult to deal with.
Yeah, totally. Uh, how do you stay motivated? So, you like what we're just talking about here, it's you in your home studio and you're doing I'm assuming you're also doing the production and mixing of it. Um well, okay, so which you are. So how do you stay motivated? Because that is, from making the music and it's a blank canvas to okay, well now I have to change and I have to just hammer out this solo 100 times until I find a groove or set of phrasing that I like to be able to now go in there and hit it, to, splicing it all together. And I'm sure the maddening process of zooming into WAV files, clipping little set parts of it out, making sure they line up just right. Like, how do you stay
Yeah.
motivated through all of that?
The satisfaction and fulfillment and joy I get out of that, when you have a finished song and you really, like the way it sounds, that's enough to, that's why I do it. And that just keeps me, that makes me want to do it, is to get something that I really like, or maybe something that's new, kind of create something that I'm really into. That's just such a good feeling you know, that's all the motivation that's needed. I mean, it's sometimes hard to stay organized or to stay structured, I guess. Um, Especially as like we've been kind of trying to grow Chalk Dinosaur performance wise, and traveling, and like trying to stay on top of all the social media and stuff. There's so many different things that need attending. Sometimes it's hard to keep that all organized, but the actual process of making the music itself is like the definitely the easiest and best part of it.
Yeah, that's pretty beautiful to hear, honestly, because that just means you're doing something you really enjoy and you found your way, so to speak.
Trying, yeah. Yeah, I guess there's always like we're trying to, I'm trying to get to a point still where Chalk Dinosaur is, the breadwinner, which it has never been, but we're getting closer, but it definitely there's a lot more complexity now to it. Um, so it's getting harder to, have the large pockets of time to really like tunnel vision on a recording. So sometimes that has to be a little more thought out beforehand, like when to kind of schedule that.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, last question. Is there anything? Oh, and best of luck to you with scaling.
Thank you.
But is there anything in the next coming months that you're particularly looking forward to? It sounds like you're making an album, and I know you're playing Secret Dreams and a couple other places.
Yeah, the our next three shows: Johnstown, Flood City Music Festival. That'll be like the full band. Looking forward to that. Secret Dreams is probably going to be the biggest one. I mean, summer camp will have been the biggest, but Secret Dreams looks amazing. Like the lineup's incredible, and I'm looking forward to that. Our cousin's going to be playing that with us.
Oh, that's cool.
It's going to be me and my brother Nick. We're doing like our duo set, but we're going to have our cousin, who's like really good percussionist. We're gonna fly him here, and he's gonna play. We have two back-to-back shows, the Secret Dreams weekend, so He's gonna play those 2 shows with us, which we're really excited about because he's just like has so much energy, and he's just like a magnetic person, and really skilled. And I've heard him. He's got a very good connection with my brother Nick, the drummer. So I'm just excited to see what that adds to the set. So yeah, that's the main thing right now. Just taking it one show at a time, just trying to make sure we're ready and have a good set planned out. And yeah, I don't know. I'm looking forward to writing more music because we've been playing a lot of shows this year, and we have our repertoire down pretty well now. But I'm excited to start working on the next thing.
Yeah, I'm excited to listen to it. And we can pause the recording in a second, but thank you again very much for joining and expressing all that you've done with how you got here, your process, and meandering through all these questions of mine. Is there anything you want to say before we pause it?
Thank you for having me. It was fun talking about all the stuff that you asked about. You had a lot of very interesting questions and things to talk about. Yeah, I don't think there's anything I have to say. If you're, you know, interested in music, you should start recording yourself. That's that's what I think.
Yeah, no, I've been planning to for a long time. I grew up without any money, and to graduate or to think about leaving high school and going into music, knowing that it's going to be a vow of poverty for a while, I just couldn't allow myself to do it. So I went to college, and my trajectory has always been business, and then I'll get to a point of making music. And I'm actually talking to you from a studio desk that my wife got me, and I'm setting it up and
Nice.
getting my flow of being able to do that. So it's coming around the
Which
bend.
desk is it? Do you know what desk it is,
It's
or
from
like what
Etsy.
it?
It's like a custom build, but I got like a drawer with my
Sweet.
MPK down below me. I got my
Nice.
multi effect pedal. I got my Boss RC505. I like using Bitwig. A few years ago,
Interesting.
yeah, I have like I'm very methodical. I'm very like right brained in the sense of my brain is absolute fucking chaos. So I do all these things to constrain myself. And one of them is I force myself to learn a new skill every year. And the way that I force myself is I have to at least spend 10 minutes a day doing that.
Oh, nice.
And
Cool.
I think it was 2019, I did Ableton. And I was like, I'm going to learn Ableton. I'm going to force myself to learn this and really focus in on it. And I do tech for a living, so I'm huge into software. And I realized that I was getting frustrated with how the Ableton versions were so expensive, but nothing changed. And then I found out the people that used to work at Ableton left and created Bitwig. Um,
Oh,
so now I've been
okay.
messing with that, and that's what this slow build of this setup here is going to be getting to, is to allow myself to kind of be able to flip a switch and spend a few minutes and I think of it like friction, like zero friction, to be able to just pick up my Strat next to
Yeah.
me and
Yeah,
hammer
that's a
out
good
a
way to
beat
put it.
and go. Yeah.
Yeah, so Bitwig's like that's a good one if you're like a technically inclined person that likes to get under the hood type of thing.
It's essentially Ableton. So live
Okay.
looping, anything that you want to do
Oh.
with that kind of stuff. Bitwig is, in my personal opinion, it's a more confusing interface when you first see it,
Mhm.
but it makes way more sense once you start, and it's also way more customizable to be able to say like, I want these phrases here, I want this here. Um,
Okay, cool.
yeah, I like it a lot more, especially because I like doing. I want to layer. You know what I mean? Like the way that I think about it is I want to do the drums. I want to come in with the bass line. Maybe I want to do like a a 3 chord phrase on the keys real quick, and then I want to come in with the guitar and I want to really like light it up. So being able to do that on there is easier.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm forcing myself to learn this art, 505. My wife bought it because she does vocals. She
Oh,
bought it for
cool.
herself, and I've been
505.
forcing
The
myself to try to
looper
learn it.
thing. Yeah, I think yeah, recording's just endless entertainment. And I always urge people to release what they record and not get into the too perfectionistic mindset where you can't make the decision. You just can't finish something because it's just never good enough. And instead, just finish it and start a new one and finish that one. And even if they're not perfect, like don't try to make the perfect thing. And then after you make like 50 of them, you'll be way better
Yeah.
at putting stuff together.
Yeah, I have you ever heard of the Book of Five Rings?
No.
It's the guy who wrote it, it's like an ancient book, like I think it's like from like the 1400s. It's some samurai who, killed a ridiculous amount of men in single combat, and it's kind of like the art of war, but it's the samurai who wrote it as opposed to Sun Tzu. But he has this phrase in it that I think about all the time, which is it's very Taoist, but it's once you know the way broadly, you'll see it in all things. And it's something that I think about a lot. Because like what I do all day is I run software teams and we build, pretty hard shit in a short period of time. It's never enough time. It's never enough answers. And one of the things in there, the tenets of that is, iterate. So start somewhere, keep driving value, like keep what you're doing is actually building something that is making sense and useful, and put it out there as fast as you can and see how people react to it. And I think like that changed my writing so much. Like I went in college, I took a lot of creative writing classes, and that was one of the things of constraining myself to be able to put this in front of the class and get it critiqued was always so hard. Or like I wrote for my paper, school paper, same thing. Like it was just always so hard getting to that point. And through software development, which is such a goofy way, I've realized like no, just put it out there, like get it out there. And it's something I still struggle with though, because there's like I do audio essays for this podcast, and there's an audio essay that I've written. Man, I want to tell you probably 20 times. It sounds outrageous, but I think I've written it 20 times. Like I studied abroad in Taipei, Taiwan, and I want to write something that's an American in Taipei, kind of like an American Paris, but an American in Taipei, and I want to use it to as a metaphor for understanding this relationship with Taiwan and China and this is ever increasing, risk of war essentially, where most Americans just kind of subscribe as China bad, and they don't really understand Taiwan or any of that. So I kind of want to layer that in there, and it's something so personal to me, because like
Yeah.
Taiwan is almost like my second country. You know what I mean? Like I have such a fondness for it and such growth that happened there that I just haven't been able to put it out there. Um, but
Yeah.
I
Well, I
should.
think there's like, if you feel, I mean, that happens sometimes for me where if I feel like there's an idea or something that is really important to me or is extra valuable or good or something, I'll try to not rush it in that case if I really sense that there's a lot there and try to make sure that, I give the idea I'm doing it the best I can type of thing, but yeah, I definitely understand that. As long as yeah, as long as eventually it gets done and you share it, you know, you'll probably be happy that you got it the way you wanted it.
Yeah, maybe this will be the kick in the ass I need. Maybe I'll just put it out after this one, and now I'll have to do it then.
You have to like, I don't know, what do you do? Like, I feel like whenever I'm trying to figure out if something's done, I listen to it and try to just like pay attention if there's any parts that like bother me, like that I'm uncomfortable with. And then if I can get through it and, you know, get it to a point where no part of this bothers me, like makes me cringe or like, then it's ready.
I'm always bothered.
Yeah,
I'm,
that's
I always find, yeah, it's so funny. Like I am an incredibly competitive person, but I tend to not get that competitive with other people unless we're playing sports. Um, and even still, I internalize it. Like like if I'm playing basketball and like I fuck something up, I don't ever, externalize it onto the other person. It's always deeply critical of myself, which is kind of a double-edged sword. But what I tend to do
Yeah.
is, I try not to focus on it being me and focus more on the content. And if it
Right.
elicits an emotional response and I get the reaction of I did that, that's me. Like because I feel like ideas, I don't feel like ideas are mine. Like they just come from somewhere. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times I get these ideas that are fully fledged and I don't, it doesn't seem like me. You know what I mean? It seems more like I'm channeling it. So if I can get the sense that I'm listening to it or I'm reading it and I'm getting an emotional response and I'm surprised, like, oh shit, this is me, then I'm like, okay, all right, maybe I could put the criticism away for a little bit.
Yeah.
Do I feel like this will do the same thing for other people? And then if I think so, then I usually just, that's been my litmus test lately is okay, I get to that point now, all right, I'll ship it.
Interesting. Yeah. I feel like whenever I have an idea like that, that's like have to try extra hard not to I guess not to mess it up or like not to suffocate it, I guess. Not to get in the way. Do you ever have something like this, like an essay that you keep rehashing over and over again? Do you ever feel like you start to regress or like you start to like older versions better?
Sometimes, but usually if I keep editing something over and over and over again, um, I put it on a shelf and then I wait a few weeks, months, and then I start all the way over again. And when I start over again, I don't read the last one. I'll read it again later, but I want to start all the way over again. Um,
Interesting.
and because I do think like, man, I've gone like this one of this Taipei one in particular. I've gone through so many different iterations. Like one of them um, was, I don't, for lack of a better word, very broy. Like it's very like I centered it around my adventures there, but not so much from the cultural aspect of it, more from like the partying. And I went back and as I was writing it, I was like, I don't like this. Um, and then because I did party a lot when I was out there, I totally did. But I also went to a lot of temples. I learned how to meditate in a naked hot spring from a dude who spoke no English, which was a wild experience. I played a fantastic amount of guitar. Like I bought a guitar like literally the third day I was there. I bought an acoustic guitar and I played that for hours every day. Like you know, I just went around the whole island. I experienced like pretty much all regions of the island to the point where people who lived there and were from there would be like, "What? You went to really? Like what? That's just no one goes there." So I was thinking, I don't really want to highlight this. Like the tone of this is totally off. Um,
Yeah.
so I completely walked away from it. Um, I'm also, working. I'm chipping away at um, like an ebook of how to do conversations, how to be a conversationalist. Because I feel like if I had a talent that is truly of my own, it's the fact that I can usually hold a conversation with anyone wherever I am, anytime. And that one, I'm going a different way about it, in which I have an outline. I'm trying to hammer each of those things in the outline. And now, I've written about almost half of it, probably closer to past that. And now I'm just going back and I'm not throwing it away anymore. I'm saying, okay, I like this part. This part is worth expanding. Now let me
Yeah.
think about how I'm going to expand that part. This part I'm completely throwing out. This part I'm completely rewriting, as opposed to going in through. But this one's a little bit easier because I have an end goal. My end goal is I want to teach people how to talk to each other, essentially, right? And not that I'm saying
Yeah.
I'm some authority on it. I don't. I feel very uncomfortable with the concept of authority. It's more like how can I spark the inspiration or curiosity to be able to sense simple things like body language or I mean, like starting a conversation is so similar. Once again, know the way broadly with having like little tricks uh, like as a guitarist, I think it's valuable sometimes for me not to play for a while But then when I pick it back up again, I have this 3 chord jazz phrase that I don't know why. I just love it. I've played it since I was like 17. And that's the first thing I think of, or like right now I'm really really fancying like a minor seventh, sixth into the fifth into the second, of a thing, like just something with that. I'm really digging it. So there's a certain set of a phrase that I know I pick up the guitar and I can do that and get rolling. Well, there's
Mm-hmm.
things like that with conversations, like the one that I start this episode with, what do you like to do that makes you happy? I got that because I was so sick of having so many. I used to travel every week for work, and I was so sick of sitting next to somebody on an airplane and them having a conversation with me. And I'm like, I don't want to just talk about if I'm from the city we're going to. I don't want to just
Yeah.
talk about how it's turbulent. I don't want to talk about the weather. I want to get into who you are, So I figured out an escape rope, like a Pokemon escape rope from those stupid conversations is, what do you like to do that makes you happy? And there's other things that you could do that, like, you having a busy day? How's your week been? Like, there's different little phrases that you could use to get people started. Um, I know I feel like I'm meandering away from the point at this point.
I don't know. I'm interested in the book. Like, what do you think you'll do when you're done? Like, how will you market it or sell it?
I'm gonna do it as an ebook and an audiobook, I think. And I think I'll probably self-publish on Amazon, because that seems like a really easy way of doing it. Um, and I mean, I do the podcast, and I have like pretty bad dyslexia, so I've gotten really into audiobooks. So I want to make that like super produced, and really captivating. Um, and then as far as marketing it, I think I'm going to start marketing it on LinkedIn through my business folks, and hit hard on, this is a way to improve your career. And then so hit hard on that and see how that can do. And then I really want to also market it to people who are a bit socially awkward, or maybe even, on the spectrum, because those folks tend to have a harder time understanding like cues, you know, uh, how to actually read another person, right? And go down that vein of people who just want to kind of improve their social, thing. And then also I want to market it towards people who are, more looking for, I mean, for lack of a better word, like love, you know what I mean? And then I also,
Yeah.
like looking for a relationship or things like that. Cause I think so much of that is getting to know somebody, and having conversations is, I don't know any other way other than, the happenstances of life. Um, so trying to find those different niches, and I have several of them, like I was just saying, kind of mapped out a little bit. And from there, I feel like I just have to figure out ways of, either buying the ads, or doing that. I hate marketing. I have no interest in marketing, but I've been forcing myself lately. There's a great book, called Contagion that I've been reading, that Jonah Berger is the author. He kind of takes like statistics and applies it to marketing and psychology, and it's fascinating of how much, now I just can't see how bad most marketing is. So I've been trying to get better into that, to be able to find like trigger points or like fulcrums to be able to latch into it, which is also what led me into even thinking about how to market it in the way I was just describing it.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, an ebook would be cool too, because I mean, once you write it, it's you have unlimited inventory. You know, if it's a digital product, and you can just continue to sell it forever.
Yeah, this whole
Very
idea came from
appealing.
my wife telling me I should think of doing an ebook for passive income. She's like, all this shit. She's like, figure out, a way that you can have passive income of just making an ebook. Which,
Yeah, yeah, I've thought about it too.
yeah, I mean, this whole interview, the way that you kind of think about packaging or your music process or any of that kind of stuff, I think would be super, super interesting and valuable.
That's probably the only thing that I feel like I would have something to offer with a book, but that's a very big task to start, you know. I'm used to smaller projects. No, I don't think of well, I not in a long time have I done something like that of that magnitude.
So, do you know who Michael Malice is? He's like a journalist and troll.
No.
Yeah, I love him as much as he absolutely drives me up a wall. He's fascinating. He's super fascinating. He wrote a book about North Korea. He's probably like one of the experts out of North Korea. He's an interesting character nonetheless. But he said something that I latched onto, and that's what I've been doing with this. Is he said that when he writes, and he's a super successful author. He goes, "I just write a page a day. That's it, one page."
Okay, yeah. That's good. That's a good way to do it. Just start writing.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
Yeah, that would be a good way. I feel like I've tried to write about it, and it's like it's very hard to organize the amount of things. You know, if you have a lot to say about something, I feel like did you do the outline first for the ebook? You figured out like what are the main like how do I organize this in a broad sense?
This time I did. Yeah, yeah, I did. And that also just helped me once again every night be able to step up to the plate and know what to write about. And I really
Yeah.
did constrain myself to a page. Even when I wanted to write more, I would write a note at the bottom in brackets saying, "This is where I want to go next." And then the next day, I
Yeah,
knew
just
where to
save
pick
it.
up. Yeah, knew where to
It's a
pick up and
good
go with it.
it's a good way, yeah, just the consistency. It's super important, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same with practicing, right? Or creating new songs. It's just a different way of approaching it, right? Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, this time I did have an outline, and I've been trying to stick to it, even though now. So I went through, and that's actually what I'm. The right side is the Chalk Dinosaur interview, and the left side of this is my review of all the things I've written so far. And um, now I feel like I have more I want to talk about, and expand different sections, add new sections, um, which has kind of been nice. Something I heard John Mayer say like a long time ago too, from listening to him on interviews. He said there's a lot of value in walking away from the guitar and not playing it for a few months. And I feel like that's kind of where I'm at with this. Is I wrote for, I mean, I think June 6th is when I wrote the outline. So I've written every day from then until to about a week and a half ago. And then from there, I've been just reading what I wrote and not actively writing more, but just critiquing, giving bullet points of what I want to go through next. And now I'm going to go back into writing probably next week, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to pause the recording, then we can, do it in post for a second. But I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, John, for taking the time. Really inspiring. I have a lot to kind of go off from this, honestly. Thanks for bracketing at the end there. That was a lot of fun. I will put all the information of how to get into listening, on the show notes. But other than that, thank you so much, and we can definitely pause here.
All right. Yeah, thanks for having me.